Hey, what's up, TFC Tribe? Thanks for joining us for episode 2 of the TFC audio project Down Under. This episode is all about play. We look at what play is, where it's come from, how to do it, and why it's so important for physical and mental health. Plus, we delve deeper into hacking the system and our vision for creating a play-based injury prevention and performance enhancement culture.
This episode is brought to you by TFC Balance Beams. The new 90cm Tasmanian oak beam has just landed. Made using sustainably sourced wood, our partnership with Reforest Now means 2 trees are planted for every beam sold to help regenerate Australian rainforests. We see beams as functional furniture that are perfect for portable play. Beam while listening to this podcast in your living room, while standing at your desk at the office, or anywhere outdoors. Each beam comes with access to our online beam training system to help you find your flow while looking after your hips, ankles and feet. You can grab your beam at tfc-shopaus.com now.
All right, so you're back with James and Mac.
Hey guys.
And this will be the start of our weekly themes, where we delve into a particular concept that we think is important, and we just learn as much as we can about that concept and then do the best job we can of sharing that along with some of our own experiences along the way.
We're not experts, but
No.
I guess it's from our learning what we can share with the community.
Exactly. And in future episodes, we'll also be getting other members of the TFC community on to chatter out about their own experiences on the topic for that week as well. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be good to be able to get some of those members of the community that are not necessarily experts themselves in that, but have got lived experiences with those concepts to be able to share their knowledge as well.
Yeah, and more experience than us. You know, it's always good to draw on that.
Absolutely.
So today's episode will be all about play. We wanted to start with play because it is such a central part of our philosophy and really ties together a lot of different elements of what we promote.
It's at the core of everything TFC is about, TFC Australia.
Exactly, yeah. So it'll give a lot of context around what we're about and what we're trying to do with TFC Australia. And we figured it'd be best to start off with a definition of play. So I've made an adapted definition from Dr. Stuart Brown, who is the head of the National Institute of Play and literally wrote the book on play, sitting right in front of me. And he talks about lots of different characteristics of play and goes into them quite deeply in his book, so I highly recommend checking it out. But the definition I've taken from that is that play is any voluntary, apparently purposeless activity that has potential for improvisation and provides a sense of freedom from time, as well as a diminished consciousness of self. So all of which create an inherent attraction and what he describes as a continuation desire. And it's worth noting that definition is remarkably similar to the definition of flow that was provided by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Nailed it.
I've been trying to figure out how to pronounce the name. But he wrote an epic book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And we'll do a whole episode on flow. And it does have some of its own characteristics that are separate, but it is just worth noting how similar the two are.
There's a lot of overlap, yeah.
Yeah, huge overlap. And one of the biggest pieces from both of them is what Mihail talks about as a autotelic experience, which just means it's a goal within itself. Auto meaning self, and telos meaning goal. So autotelic or self-motivating goal, which just means we're doing the activity for the sake of the activity itself and not for some
end reward. Or
some external goal that we're going to get in the future.
It's probably good to compare, I guess, that definition of play then with the definition that the dictionary or the online dictionary has of it.
Yes, so we did look up the dictionary on the Oxford Dictionary online, and they define play as activity engaged in for enjoyment or recreation, especially by children. So,
which is the interesting part of all of that.
Yeah, and it's a great simple definition, although it does point to part of the problem in society today is that cultural belief that play is mostly for children, and that adults should be really primarily working. before we do get into that work versus play
Yeah.
dichotomy, it's good to just want to talk about Todd Hargrove's characteristics of play as well. So he wrote the book Playing with Movement, and movement play is really what we're mostly about. And the characteristics of play that he talks about is one, that it's intrinsically motivating, which is what we were saying before, autotelic, that it's explorative. So you're not following a map per se, you're just playing with different ways of doing things. A good example is a baby learning how to move. No one's going, oh, you need to bridge and roll,
They're doing
or
it
whatever,
because that's how they have to learn.
Yeah, they're just exploring what they can do with their body.
Yeah.
And through that, play can be creative is another characteristic. So when you're not following a map, you have the ability to improvise and to figure out different ways of solving problems. And another term for that would be tinkering. So play is like playing with different variables.
I like that.
To figure out what works, and just, you don't have to follow, again, a specific structured map. It's going, oh, if I try this, what happens? Okay, that didn't work so well, I'll try this. Oh, that worked pretty well, but is there another better way of doing it? It's that sort of tinkering mindset. And then he also talks about the fact that can be risky. It involves an element of risk, and that's especially when it comes to playing with movement. And yes, risk can be dangerous. Obviously, things can be dangerous, but knowing how to manage that risk, or learning how to manage that risk through play, is actually a big part of becoming a viable human being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you don't learn how to manage risk, then you're actually at much greater risk.
You're throwing yourself in the deep end.
Exactly. So we could compare that to work, which is basically the opposite in a sense. So it's structured, generally repetitive and controlled, and extrinsically motivating. So we are doing something for the sake of some external goal in the future.
Yeah.
So obvious examples like working at a job so that you can get money so that you can pay the bills, or working out, going to the gym so that you lose fat or build muscle or look better or whatever. And those goals certainly are valuable goals, or they can be valuable, and the work approach can be very valuable. You definitely can't just play all day.
But you also just can't work all day. And that's sort of the balance that I think has been lost a lot these days and you go back to that definition from the Oxford Dictionary that emphasises children. It's the adults that are going and doing the work every day while the children play. And that for me was something that, in my own work journey, I noticed I only sort of became aware of in the last 12 months, just how much I was missing that intrinsically motivating aspect of life. When, from my job, I was working long 12-hour days, and being a reporter, you're on the go from 5 a.m. as soon as you make your first call, until 6:30, and then your brain can switch off. But you're working towards a goal or a deadline.
Because your job is to appear on TV that night. You don't have the option of not appearing on TV. That's your job.
It's a daily deadline. So there is a benefit in that, once 6:30 or 6 p.m. comes, the day is done in that regard. But to not, I guess, to work, and then not be able to find the time for play outside of that was really, I think was impacting my mental health a fair bit, because it does weigh on you. And when you start to realize that you're missing out on morning routines to be able to get down to the park and to move, or, to go and play soccer at night or train at night, not being able to have that play element, it can have a really detrimental impact on your well-being, I feel.
Exactly. So the balance is really important, and work, like we said, it can be very valuable, and the way we like to look at it is it helps facilitate play. So, you should have, sure, you need to pay the bills and work in that sense so that you can have some extra space and, security and shelter and things that facilitate some play in your life. And similarly, from a physical point of view, then, doing some strength training and mobility training and things like that actually help expand your capacity so that you can then play with more different types of movement. And work can also be... play sort of then gives that work a sense of meaning. So you're not just working out for the sake of working out or mobilizing your hips for the sake of mobilizing your hips. It's mobilizing your hips so that you can hacky sack better.
That you can play.
Yeah, so you can go and play a game of Hackmanton, which we'll describe a bit later. And, you know, work... There is a bit of a blurred line between work and play here, and that's, you know, a good example might be someone going for a run and pounding the pavement versus someone running through a forest trail with a deep sense of awe and enjoyment and fully present. You know, the act of running is the same, and they might be getting very similar exercise, but their intention and their meaning behind that is very different. And that's sort of where that concept of flow comes in.
Absolutely.
It's that connection between work and play, and having something meaningful and purposeful to you is actually what matters.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, personally coming into this role and working with TFC, being able to weave those two in and to blur the lines more is so much more rewarding from the work you're doing, because it's not feeling like work if there's an element of play to it.
Yes.
And you're in that flow state, like you said.
Yeah, and it's purposeful.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that our purpose is helping other people play. So it's it's circular, but it's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's our job to play because we want other people to play.
It's a handy little...
Love it.
Yeah, very, very handy. But I guess, do you want to sort of go into a bit of the historical context then of how play evolved and how it has gone from what it used to be to like we said, what it is today?
Yeah, I always find it is helpful to explore the history and historical context around concepts. And when it comes to play, it's a bit of a paradox almost in an evolutionary point of view, or at first glance it might be seen that way, because it doesn't seem to provide any specific survival value. So it expends energy and it exposes you to risk, and it doesn't, provide you with food or shelter or anything like that. So from a, traditional evolutionary point of view, it's like, well, why?
What's the point?
What's the point of playing if it's just wasteful? And what we do know as well from animal studies is that play is ubiquitous among all intelligent animals. And in fact, the more intelligent the animal, the more it tends to play. So
there's got to be some evolutionary value.
Exactly. Yeah. So there has to be, because otherwise it wouldn't be a trait that survived in species. And it's so ubiquitous, and obvious examples in animals like dogs and dolphins and everything. But even birds play, in a sense. And it's just very well studied that play is very common.
It wouldn't still be here if we didn't need it.
Exactly. So to explore why we do need it, play, we'll just talk about humans for now. Play is how we learn and practice movement. And that starts as a newborn baby, pretty much, or, close to newborn, where they start to explore rolling and crawling and squatting and eventually standing and walking. And like we said, there's no one telling them what to do. There's no one sort of giving them structured PT sessions on how to roll or crawl. They just do it because they want to. It's intrinsically motivating. They're wanting to explore their environment, and they see their parents or their siblings up and about doing stuff, and they want to go and do that stuff too.
Yeah.
So then over time, that leads to things like chasing and climbing and jumping and throwing and wrestling, and all of these activities that you would expect kids to start doing, especially sort of, maybe not these days.
You'd hope.
So if
climbing
kids
trees,
kids were left to their own devices without their devices, without their iPads and stuff, then they would be doing those kinds of activities if you put them in a natural environment. And again, it's some of those are discouraged these days, but if you think back to it, being able to run quickly away from something or towards something helps you hunt. Being able to climb trees helps you escape predators or survey the area and get a better understanding of the environment. And throwing, hunting, Wrestling is self-protection.
So I guess while initially it may not look like from the outside that it does have any survival aspects, the fact that we do it and learn through play enables us to have those traits.
It's actually practice for our body to become adaptable and resilient, so that in the future we can survive and that we can contribute to our community. So in that sense, you can really see how important play is, because it gives you that, it's like an internal reward that no one has to tell you to go and practice those things. You just want to go and practice those things because it's fun.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a trick of the brain. It gives you a reward chemical for doing things that will eventually help it survive.
And so how has that changed then, do you think? What have you seen in comparison to, I guess, ancestral play to now, like you were suggesting before, with devices and the way we learn to play? How has it changed?
So over time, play has become more relegated to sports, basically, in essence. So we still glorify play. We still love play as a society. And in fact, the best players amongst us, we really glorify, and we'll gather in tens of thousands to watch and watch on the TV and everything. And it's that competitive sporting scenario. It's almost been relegated to, like, if you want to play, go and play sports.
A structured,
especially if you're an adult,
competition.
Yeah, it's structured, sort of competitive nature of it. And there's a lot of value in competitive sports.
But what do you think's the risk then of that transition? Is it the fact that the joy is taken, or an element of the joy is taken out of it, or that we've lost touch a little bit with that ancestral need, that deeper desire?
I think it's the subtraction of the natural movement play, in a sense. So we've said, okay, sports is how you play, which in a large essence, I mean, a lot of them include some elements of natural movement, but in a lot of ways, the sports is sort of an unnatural way, quote unquote unnatural way to move, which our bodies should be able to do and should be able to have the tolerance for if they were doing lots of other movement as well. But it's this, okay, you work and you sit down and you do your work at school or at work, at your job, and then you can go and play in your sports and everything. But it's not, we haven't included play as part of that movement, part of that learning process.
Is there the risk that those competitive sports, that unnatural movement, starts to feel like work?
Yeah, and it can do as well, because of the inherent competitiveness of it, where it becomes more about winning than it does about just playing. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of value in that structured sport arena, but especially if it's sort of most of the focus is on play and having fun and enjoying it, and also if it's more accepted to be playing in different ways and in more unstructured ways as well, which it is for young children, but it should be for everyone.
Why shouldn't it be for everyone? Yeah, exactly. So should we talk about then how to play? I mean, you've gone on your own journey. We've always played, you and I. I mean, that's how we met, playing soccer on the soccer field. But your own movement journey, how have you been able to bring play into what you do now?
Yeah, well, I started getting a lot more into movement as a whole. I've always loved playing all manner of different sports, and I was very fortunate that my mum and dad just allowed me to have a crack at pretty much anything I want. So I pretty much played every sport except for the classic Aussie ones of Aussie rules football and cricket. But always just love having a crack at things and exploring a new skill, and I've always been okay with being a beginner at them. And
I think, I'll butt in there, but I think you're also fortunate that you've grown up in a family where, yes, you've done the traditional sports, but you've also had games that your uncle himself has created. You've had that constant exposure to the creativity of play as well.
Yeah, exactly. The creative aspect. So yeah, like Royal Pong. My uncle Gus created this awesome game called Royal Pong, which is like a combination of tennis, squash, and ping pong. Very, very, very fun. Probably one of the funnest games I've played. And yeah, exactly. It's that creative element, and that's, me and my family have always created different games to play, and really been okay with just that playful approach to anything. It wasn't always relegated to competitive sports, but so I started getting more into sort of like movement culture in my second year of uni, and I started exploring different things around gymnastics and locomotives, and inspired by people like Ido Portal and GMB, Ryan Hurst from GMB. I really got into his stuff, and still really, really highly recommend it. And basically from years and years of sitting at school and at uni where I was learning about movement and all of these musculoskeletal problems that we were sitting for most of the day studying about them, I found that, my body was very stiff. And so I just started playing with ground-based movements, like those animal movements that we've been doing more recently with you. Like squats and froggers and monkeys and all of these things that I started, like, I never really properly worked on mobility. I really did just start playing with those types of movements.
Yeah, right.
And I've ever since had quite good mobility. Or like, when I say good mobility, it's sort of just how mobile a human should naturally be.
Yeah, it's just natural ability
rather
than
like the ability to squat all the way down to the ground and to be able to move around on the ground fluidly and efficiently. Like, these are things that all humans should be able to do.
And then you contrast it to me, who, again, sat all through uni, sat all through school, sat all through work. And I think I was probably fortunate that I was outdoors a fair bit and was able to move for maybe 50% of my day. I was outside and standing and walking, but I was doing it in the wrong shoes. And you look at the result and you compare your squat to mine, or your ankle mobility to mine, and there's a massive gulf. And frustrating for me, because I wish I knew earlier that down the line it would have that flow on effect, because again, I through school and uni and into work, my play outlet was structured. It was competitive soccer, and you would train and you would run and then you would play, but you'd go from 8 or 12 hours of work straight into that, and you weren't moving enough. I wasn't doing enough natural movement, and I wasn't playing enough with my movement.
Exactly. And that's a good point to touch on, actually, is the variability of movement that play facilitates. So your play was soccer, and which is a certain subset of movements: running, jumping, kicking, for the most part. And otherwise you were standing and walking or sitting. So it's a very, very narrow collection of movements compared to what the human body is capable of and what the human body really should be doing day to day. And this is where the sort of natural movement or ground movement, we'll have podcasts on these topics as well to expand on them, but this is where that comes in, is the variability that provides to your system through adopting lots of different positions and exploring lots of different positions, which otherwise you would never take your body through those positions if you're just sitting, or if you're only doing one type of sport or activity. And
then I guess that's for myself. I mean, I've never been someone to go to the gym and to move. I've always wanted it to be linked to play, because that's been the way that I've enjoyed exercising. It's given me joy to move through that manner. But tools have been a really important part of I guess making that enjoyable, of making that fun. And that's particularly what I've found since coming along on the TFC journey. Is
a great example is the hacky sack.
The hacky sack, the beam, they're really simple tools that immediately, don't take a lot to get your head around. Don't take too much to learn. Have that reward, because as you're learning, you're or playing with them and tinkering with them, like you said before, you're getting that feedback from your brain and from your body that, oh, this, you know, isn't just fun, but I'm learning as I go. And yeah, I found that they've been really powerful to help me on that journey, because like I said, I was never someone who would have just gone and done 15 by 3, 3 by 15 squats in the morning and then 15 by, just that repetitive work aspect of exercise always sort of scared me. Never excited me.
Whereas now we can go down to the park together, play, we can do a full body warm up and then play with some natural movements, some ground movements and locomotives, and play with the hacky, and in 45 minutes to an hour, we're thoroughly moved. Where,
you feel it.
You've felt like you've actually worked, but for the most part, it's been enjoyable, explorative play. And certainly when it comes to the hacky sack or the beam, you do get that really deep, satisfying feeling when you get it right. And that's hard. It's very hard to beat. And certainly you can obviously get that satisfaction at the gym. If gym is your thing, then it almost does feel like play, because you really get deep into it and you focus on the feeling of your muscles pumping and all of that. But the benefit of the variability and of that ability to progress the skill in different ways. And, for us, we've progressed hacky sack to a full game called Hackmanton, which combines all of these different aspects of power and flexibility and precision and athleticism.
And like you said, it's a workout.
Yeah.
Like you play that for 45 minutes to an hour and you are thoroughly worked.
Yeah.
But you've been playing.
Exactly. And you could, the other day, Lucas and I, our mate who's big on the hacky as well and part of our Hacking the System, him and I played for 2 hours straight, and we just wanted to keep playing, but we were just like, it's probably best that we stop, because it's actually we might be a little too sore tomorrow.
And you think of, that benefit that you're able to get out of a sport like that, and all that came from getting creative with play.
Exactly.
It all was born out of, us away for a weekend playing with the hacky sack, and there was a badminton net there, and we thought, let's combine the two and see what sort of a game we can come up with. And now we'd like to hope one day an Olympic sport that people all over the world can play, because it's so much fun. And it's a really, really good physical workout. Yeah, and it's extremely challenging and extremely satisfying. And so it's that really unique combination of, if you jump on the court with someone who is a lot better than you, then you go, oh, right, I want to get a bit better at this so I can actually play. And then once you do play and you're in that sort of more, it's a friendly competition where obviously it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. Your pride might get hurt a little bit, but it's mostly about helping each other get better and just enjoying the process. I think that's another interesting element we haven't really touched on is looking at that competitive nature. If you go to play with someone who isn't at your level, then it doesn't have that same effect on the mind and the body. You're not enjoying it as much, which is really interesting, because I know if we step on the court together because we're the same level, then
it's very exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's much more. So actually, Mihaly talks about a flow channel in his book. So flow happens between anxiety and boredom, basically, in the channel between those two. So if you're not good enough, or you're playing with someone that's not good enough, then there's an element of boredom, like, it's just not really going anywhere. And then if you're playing with someone who's way too good, it's that element of anxiety. Or if a challenge is far too much, you've got anxiety and you're like, oh geez, I can't do this. But in the channel between those two is where you can really find flow and be in your element.
And I think the big risk today is that when people fall out of that channel, they give up on trying to get back into that channel.
Exactly.
They'll fall out, and you've seen it through your journey as a physiotherapist, people coming to you wanting to learn to play again, to be able to play with their kids. And it's because somewhere along their lives, they either got an injury or they just got too physically unfit that they couldn't play the sport that they loved to do when they were younger. And they weren't able to work back into that space on the spectrum where they could enjoy it again.
Yes, because, if sport was their only outlet for movement and that got taken away from them because they couldn't play it anymore, then what's left is just a sedentary lifestyle. And obviously the less you do, the less you're able to do. And over time, then they realize, oh, actually now I've got a kid. I really want to be able to get down on the ground and play with him, but my knee hurts or my back hurts and I need to do something about this now. And yeah, by that time, it's definitely not too late. It's never too late. But by that time, a whole heap of sort of dysfunction or a whole heap of stiffness and weakness and pain has built up that really shouldn't have been built up in the first place if playing with movement was more accepted outside of sports.
And I think that comes quite full circle quite nicely to what we are trying to do with the Foot Collective here in Australia with players. That underlining factor is not just to help adults learn to play again, but to make sure that kids keep playing as well.
Yeah.
Because we want everyone to be able to play for the rest of their lives, because if they do, then they'll never fall out of love with movement, and they'll stay strong and they'll stay resilient.
Exactly.
And when they have their own kids, they'll be able to play with their own kids. And that, I guess, is where Hackying the System sort of comes in. We see that as really an embodiment of all of that. The potential to teach kids how to build strong, resilient bodies and prevent injuries, young footballers, but then also to introduce it to their parents and to teach them, the value and the importance of play, and hopefully encourage them to join in with their kids. I guess, we should probably explain what Hacking the System is. Yeah,
exactly. Well, it started because early last year we started playing a lot of hacky sack and just realized, first of all, how fun it is when you can really get on a good roll, and also this is a really good foot dexterity exercise, and you get a lot of dynamic hip rotation and a whole heap of
I can feel my hips still burning from this morning.
Yeah,
so no lie about that.
You're using your hips and feet a lot, and TFC is a lot of what we talk about is about integrating the feet and hips and making them more mobile and more intelligent. And so I thought, we thought hacky sack is a really cool tool, a very simple, cheap and fun tool to facilitate that. And so we just sort of kept practicing it, and then realized that the combination of, especially when combined with the beam and some natural movements, could be really, really powerful for just integrating the whole body. And then also that would be an ideal combination for injury prevention in sports. And
hence, I guess the name Hacking the System. It felt like you were hacking the system, because the system being work and the hack being the hacky that makes that all fun. That gives it that play element.
Exactly. And so the system is really the combination of learning how to hacky sack, which we've got a system for that, which is called the Perfect System, PFKT, pick, flick, kick, trick. And also we've got a movement system, which includes different strength and natural movements, which we're calling body hacking. We do love puns and wordplay. And along with beam. So the beam is just a really powerful tool for developing ankle and hip stability, as well as foot strength and foot mobility as well, especially.
And you combine that with the hacky, and it's the perfect screen to test where your balance is at.
Yeah.
And where your skill level is at with both.
Yeah, exactly. And all of that combined just creates a very fun, engaging, I guess, program or system that improves your balance, improves your foot dexterity and foot health, and improves your ability to, well, it minimizes the risk of injuries. We
can't prevent injuries.
Can't prevent all injuries, of course, but there's very good research behind balance and proprioceptive training for injury prevention, and obviously strength through a large range of motion is important as well. And so if you combine all these things, the thing with young athletes especially is that they're not going to want to go to the gym and do 3 times 15. You know, like you said, it's inaccessible and it's boring for them. Kids want to play, and if you can create a program that incorporates a lot of these important elements into something that is fun, and then they can express all of their abilities in a game like Hackmanton, then it's something that could actually catch on and really become a culture.
And I think already it's been really rewarding to see. Already we've had a 3-day holiday program that's been run with some soccer kids here in Brisbane from one of Queensland's top clubs. And I mean, these kids are good footballers. Like, they know what they're doing. The youngest was 8, and it was really impressive, to see how quickly they picked up the beam, the hacky and also the beam, and got around the animal movement. But the greatest part is that they were having so much fun, and you could see the looks on their faces, and they were excited. They wanted to come back. They thought there was another day. They were hoping they could come back next week. And we've got a 6-week course now in the works, targeted towards young footballers, young elite footballers, who are the perfect candidates for this, because A, they know how to play soccer, so picking up the hacky will come as a second nature to them. B, they're sedentary for a lot of their days, and these kids are going from 8 hours at school straight into soccer training, and they're putting boots on straight away, and they're doing sprints, and they're doing high knees, and they're doing bum kicks, and then they're getting into high impact football at an elite level without actually really properly moving. And so for us to be able to offer this course to these kids in that gap between school and football training, it's the perfect avenue, not to overwork them, because, they're fit young athletes to begin with, but
to train their brains almost. It's a neuromuscular system that needs tuning in, essentially. And they need that extra variability of the different types of movements, like we talked about, and the especially the variability for their feet. Because if you come from school where you're wearing school shoes or whatever it is, conventional running shoes, and then coming and strapping on these tight, narrow boots, your feet really aren't getting much of a break. Another beautiful aspect is that, well, you hope that, like you said, it's training their brains so that when they do come home from football training, they get their boots off and they pick up a hacky. And another benefit is that they can kick that inside without breaking anything. Yeah, there's no excuse not to muck around with one, or get on a beam. Exactly. And the idea is that, yes, it's a 6-week course, but it's teaching them skills that they can then play with for the rest of their life. And they don't have to really, the cool thing is with the hacky and beam is they're almost the teacher in themselves. If you're doing it right, you get clear feedback. You either drop the hacky and I need to change something about what I did then, or you fall off the beam, and it's that clear feedback. You don't really need someone coaching you to go, oh, you had to do this, this, and this. Your brain just
dropped it, or you fell off the beam.
You get the feedback and you figure it out, and your brain gets the data of, okay, I did this and this didn't work, so now I try this, and it's just constant exposure to that, which then allows much more efficient motor patterns and more fun as well.
Well, and I think to tie it back to that to play, I think what we've said from the outset, when we started playing hacky sack and we started teaching kids how to play hacky sack, and the same with the beam as well, it was always don't apologize. It was don't say sorry. And that comes back to that whole competitive, structured nature of sports, is you play to win. Yeah. Whereas
it's no failure, really. It's just learning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And exploring.
Yeah. Learning and exploring, and, getting some teamwork involved, and just having that sort of open beginner's mind and exploring.
Like you said, connecting as well. So not just with the person you're playing with, but we hope that we can build a community with this, where that's a massive part of play. I think is that connection that you get to other people while you're doing it.
Yeah, very true. And that sort of, oh, he can do that. I'll try that. Oh, he created this different way of moving. Sweet, I'll try that. And yeah, we see that already in the Instagram community that we've got, with people trying different beam challenges and movement challenges and this and that, and finding different ways of doing things. And so we just want to bring that to
the masses,
a new community, and just expand that and get that community connection going through play. Yeah.
Play is the way.
That's our tagline now.
Well, we hope that was helpful. I think that pretty much covered it all.
Yeah. So check out our social pages and websites if you're wanting a website. Sorry, no, we don't have to yet. If you want to check out some ideas for how to play, and also those tools that we mentioned, we sell really nice, good quality handmade hacky sacks and Tasmanian oak beams that we actually plant 2 trees per beam sold.
Yeah, that's exciting. A new partnership that we're expanding from 1 tree to 2 trees now.
Which is great. And there'll be ideas as well of how to create your own beam on there. But otherwise we'll be back next week for an episode on movement nutrition. And so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Catch you next week.